You're listening to the Shout Podcast, the official health and well-being podcast from the Firefighters Charity.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Shout Podcast from the Firefighters Charity. I'm your host, Kim Robson, and this week we'll be guiding you through an array of content to help you get to grips with the latest lockdown guidance. Because let's be honest, we've all found it a bit confusing. 2 metres, then 1 metre plus, quarantine, no quarantine, local lockdowns, pubs and restaurants reopening, but schools staying closed. It's almost been too much to keep track of over the last few weeks. So it's hardly surprising that for many of us, after months in lockdown with very little social interaction, other than those we live with, the easing of lockdown restrictions and the return to an altered reality, where mask wearing and social distancing is the norm, is a cause for real anxiety. Thankfully, the Firefighters Charity's Wellness and Behaviour Change Coach, Sally Walker, joins us this week to offer some welcome advice on how to deal with our changing lives in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. I also spoke earlier this week to 2 of the charity's senior exercise therapists, Rachel Reese and Kelly Brown, to talk about the physical challenges many of us may be facing following months in lockdown. From a drop in our fitness levels to an increase in our drinking and snacking, Rachel and Kelly tell us how we can get back into healthy ways now that we are less restricted to our homes. And after the charity launched an urgent fundraising appeal last week to help it bridge the £200,000 a month shortfall in its income caused by the pandemic, Sophie Pearce spoke to Essex Fire and Rescue Services' Martin Chester to find out why being a regular donor to the charity is so important to him. From being unable to walk to walking 10k or cross-training every day in July, Martin has overcome an arterial problem in his leg with help from the charity to get back on his feet. Today, with his fundraising challenge now well underway, it's fascinating to hear how he's pushing himself to raise funds and why he feels everyone should answer the charity's urgent appeal. Later on, as usual, we'll cram in as many of your fundraising and heroic achievements as possible in Thank You Too. And don't forget, you can get involved in Shout Podcast by sharing your stories, telling us what you want to know, and sharing your good news. Just go to firefighters.org.uk/Shout Podcast. So to kick off this, the 4th episode of Shout Podcast, here's Sally Walker to help us get to grips with this ever-changing world of ours.
If you're feeling anxious about lockdown easing, you're not alone. Maybe a member of your family has been shielding and you're nervous or fearful about them going back out into the world. Perhaps you're concerned about a second spike and what that might mean for your community. Or maybe you're looking forward to getting back to a new normal with your routine, but have some natural concerns and reservations. Whether you're returning to work from furlough, still waiting to come back, or have been working all the way through lockdown, it's natural that the lifting restrictions may lead to feeling mixed emotions. Knowing there are significant changes to working, shopping and leisure environments can naturally provoke an anxiety response. Anxiety is caused by being faced with new, unpredictable or uncertain situations. And when you consider that our current COVID world ticks all those boxes, it's perfectly reasonable to experience such feelings. When we get anxious, stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol enter our system as part of our fight, flight or freeze response. It's this physiological response that causes many of the symptoms of stress and anxiety to happen subconsciously. This is not our fault, it's just the way our nervous system functions, which can lead to very unpleasant sensations or thought processes. You may have a whole list of worries. Worried you could be increasing your risk of exposure to the coronavirus. Worries about your mental health as you adapt to a changed environment or working practices. Or maybe just worried that old work stresses pre-lockdown will have followed you into this new chapter. So what can we do about it? Well, it can be really helpful to work out if your worries are normal or excessive. For that, it can be useful to imagine a sliding scale. At one end, you have normal levels of worry, which can be useful in supporting us to find solutions to problems. And at the other end, you have excessive worry. And by that, I mean worry that has a negative impact on your daily life. Take just one of your worries and consider where it sits on this scale. How much is it dominating your thoughts right now? Is it useful to you? Can you do anything about it? Have you got evidence to back up the worry? If you're worrying more than normal, you may benefit from trying new techniques to manage these worries or concerns to support your well-being. So first of all, cut yourself some slack. These are challenging times we find ourselves in. It's in our nature to prefer to have a blueprint for situations so we can know exactly what to expect. But we don't have that at the moment. We're in uncharted territory right now. This is difficult because we're having to adapt and learn as we go. So give yourself permission to acknowledge how you feel and try not to judge yourself. Being kinder to ourselves can really help lower our stress response and support us to manage our worries and concerns. Also, try to limit things that might trigger excess worry. Gather information from reliable sources and people you trust, rather than endlessly watching the news or scrolling on social media, where facts can often get lost in opinion or stories that sensationalize. If it's important to you to gather information to help you cope, pick your sources carefully. Look at statistics for your local authority or the NHS, as these should be much more reliable. Talking about how you feel can also help. Share your worries with someone impartial you trust, who will not try to bear the burden for you. This might be a work colleague you're close to, who may have similar feelings to you. Often, just by voicing our worries to another person, we can begin to find ways to cope with them. Allocating yourself dedicated worry time can also be useful. This might sound like an odd suggestion, but bear with me. If you're worrying excessively, look at setting aside a specific daily time when you give yourself permission to express your concerns for a limited period of time, and ideally not just before you go to bed. Try writing down your concerns and then reading them back. This may help you work out where they sit on that scale, whether they're real problem worries or hypothetical. If it's real, taking time to work out a solution may help. If it's hypothetical and based on an endless list of what-ifs, looking at the facts may alleviate some of the concerns. A lot of this worry can be parked for a while, as it's unlikely to impact in the immediate future, if at all. Seek reassurance where possible. Employers are taking every precaution to make working environments as safe as possible. So if you're worried about returning to work, try finding out what they are. They may include one-way systems, socially distanced desks, hand sanitizer stations, or limited numbers at any time. It's likely you'll be told about all of these measures before you go back to work, but if you're unsure, find the appropriate person to ask. The safety of you and your colleagues is highly valued. You could also experiment with relaxation techniques. As I've mentioned, your body releases stress hormones that are designed to provoke a response, so take steps to calm your mind and body. This will also have the added bonus of helping you sleep, which is so important for our well-being. We've created some guided relaxation sessions which you can find on our website at firefightescharity.org.uk/relax. We also have a library of recommended health and well-being apps you could try to help you relax, which you can find on the same page. NHS's Every Mind Matters website also has some useful resources, and psychologytools.com has a helpful free guide to living with worry and anxiety amidst global uncertainty. It's full of useful information, worksheets and resources, so I'd really recommend you have a look if you can. Whatever your worries are, know that you're not alone. If you're struggling to cope, let us help. We have our team on hand to support you. Don't suffer in silence. Call our support line on 0800 389 8820 or make an enquiry online at firefighters.charity.org.uk/support.
Cast your minds back to March. Back then, in the early days of lockdown, we were inundated with online options to help us keep fit, with Joe Wicks leading the way for many. But as the days carried on, let's be honest, many of us lost our motivation to get our trainers on and turned to snacking instead of squatting. However, as movement restrictions begin to lift and things begin to return to some kind of normal, you might be thinking about taking steps to reverse the effects that the life in lockdown has had on your physical health. Senior exercise therapists Kelly Brown and Rachel Reese joined me earlier this week to talk about what steps we can now safely take to look after our bodies after months inside our own homes. Kelly and Rachel, welcome to the Shout podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you along. Now, lockdown has been a bit of a nightmare, and there's been many of us who have been really quite inactive for the last few months, and I'm looking to you to give me advice on how we can help ease ourselves back into exercise.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I can give is just to do that, just to gradually ease yourself back into fitness, particularly if you have been less active during lockdown, because you really need to build up your exercise levels slowly, otherwise you could be at risk of injuring yourself. One of the key things to remember is that your muscles, joints, and particularly your tendons don't like change. They really take time to adapt. So if you suddenly start exercising again at the level you were at 3 months ago, pre-lockdown, it'll be a real shock to the system for these tissues. And you should just aim to gradually build up your exercise levels. This includes how often you're training, how hard, how long you're exercising for. But remember, everybody is different. And for some people, they're really eager to get back into the fitness. For others, it's a very daunting task to get those trainers back on. So if you do feel a little overwhelmed at the prospect of returning to exercise, one of the best things you can do is just set yourself some realistic goals. This will give you something to focus and aim for real purpose for your training.
Kelly, that's great advice about setting those goals, but sometimes just even getting your head around that and starting is just, what do I do? It's like you say, you can almost get up in the morning and stick your trainers on and then go, now what? So how do we know what sort of goals we could set and what is too much or maybe even too little to aim for?
So yeah, ultimately, your goal needs to be relevant for you setting it. And it all depends on what you want to achieve and what your current fitness levels are. But a way I like to approach it is to use the acronym SMART and set SMART goals. So a SMART goal is the S. It stands for specific. So what is your goal? You need to make sure it's relevant to you. An example could be to, run 5K. And then moving on to the M is for measurable. The goal needs to have a measure. So if we're thinking of that 5K, that's the distance. You could even add a time you wanted to complete the running. Then A stands for attainable. You need to make sure you can reach your goal. You need to set yourself a realistic target. Long term, you might have visions of crossing the London Marathon finishing line, but that's a very daunting challenge. It needs broken down into manageable chunks. Try setting your targets on that 5K to start with, and then go from there. R is for relevant. That goal needs to be personal to you. It needs to be something that you enjoy and something that you'll continue with. And the last thing to consider is T for timescale. Ensure you give yourself enough time to reach that goal. Break it down into manageable chunks and just build from there. One bit of advice I would normally say would be to join a running club, but with the restrictions that are in place at the moment with coronavirus, that isn't necessarily an option. So you can maybe have a little look on the App Store, see what apps are out there, see if there's any for getting back into running. You can download them onto your smartphone and they give you some really good tips and pointers. The Firefighters Charity is actually partnered up with Orca. So Orca is one of the world's leading help app evaluation and advisor organisations. And they give reviews on different apps. They give you data on the data protection, the clinical assurance, and the user experience. And the Firefighter Charity's beneficiaries have access to a library of reviewed wellbeing apps. And all you need to do is just log onto the Firefighter Charity website and just type Orca into the top bar there.
I mean, that sounds great. There's definitely some advice there. I think for me, before I want to ask Rachel a little bit about nutrition in a minute, but before we do that, Kelly, for me, I have struggled in lockdown. I mean, I've got to put my hands up and be honest. I struggle with any sort of fitness at any time of day because I think, oh yeah, that seems like a really good idea. And then I sort of can't be bothered. But I wanted to set myself a little bit of a challenge and do something. And I found going out with my partner, my boyfriend, was good. He didn't want to run, so he got on his bike and sort of came with me whilst I did a bit of running. Would you recommend something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely would recommend it. And it's really important not to let yourself get disheartened. The best bit of advice I can give is just to pace yourself and gradually build up on your exercise levels as you feel ready to do so. And if you are able to exercise with your partner, that's great. That's another way of keeping their motivation nice and high. But if you do find yourself a couple of weeks back into exercise and you're starting to lose that motivation, a good way to pick it back up is to maybe try and vary your training and try and find different ways of exercising that you enjoy. So you may find that you predominantly enjoy cardio. So it could be the running that you mentioned. It could be cycling or swimming. But others, it may be to focus on resistance exercise, whether that be through bodyweight exercises, resistance machines or free weights, but all types of exercising has its place. And ultimately, any form of moving is burning calories, which is great. And if you can try to include that wide variety of different exercise forms, it will give you the most physical benefit, and the variety of your workout will help keep things just that little bit more interesting and try and keep your motivation levels up.
Perfect. Kelly, sounds great, but I've got a little bit of a worry and Rachel's going to help me out with this one because I think really we do need to talk about nutrition as well, don't we? So what sort of role would nutrition have in all this, Rachel?
You're right. So nutrition does play, a huge role. You know what they say, you can't outrun a bad diet. Okay. So during lockdown, people's goals from lockdown are going to be completely different. It might be that for some people have put on a lot of weight, put on a lot of fat mass. It might be for others that they haven't been able to train. They've lost, a lot of muscle mass and they want to build that back in. Also really, really important, nutrition in regards to your mental and your physical health. So we're not just looking at energy balance. So absolutely, we want to be looking at how much we're expending, how much energy we're expending through exercise and how much energy that we need to take in. But we also, it's not just about energy expenditure, it's also about making sure that we get the nutrients and the vitamins and things that we need. So having a healthy, balanced diet is important, for our health as well as our, specific fitness-based goals.
We've got into bad habits, so let's be honest, in lockdown, some of us have been a little bit naughty, snacking in the kitchen, bits and pieces like that. What advice do you have for that?
Absolutely, and that's myself included. It's easy to get into those sorts of habits. In regards for some of us that perhaps have put on a little bit of weight, try and not to be too hard on yourself would be firstly my advice. Firstly, looking at diet as a whole, making sure that that you look at your macronutrients. So you're looking at your fats, your carbs and your protein. They're all important for health. So making sure that we don't, pick those fad type diets. All right. One of the biggest ones that gets us is sugar. Trying to stay away from those sugar-based foods. Now, that's for many reasons. Sugar can make us feel lethargic, and when we get those low dips in energy, we want more sugary type stuff. All right. So it's quite important that we understand the role of sugar in the diet. And people, when we're looking at the carbs, carbs are really, really important, and we shouldn't, try and have no carbs in our diet or things like that, but we should be looking at getting lots of complex carbohydrates. We should be looking at getting lots of fibre in the diet. But the sugars or the carbohydrates that we should be avoiding or trying to avoid as much as we can are those simple sugars. When we're looking at foods, we should look at something called our glycemic index. So when we're having lots of rubbishy, sugary foods, what that does is it gives us a high spike of energy, and that makes us feel fantastic. However, that spike goes up nice and quickly and it drops dramatically very quickly. And when our energy levels drop, that's when we crave those rubbishy type foods again. So try and pick foods which have a lower glycemic index, which are going to give you gradual amounts of energy throughout the day, which make you feel satiated, full, and you're less likely to want to go snack on those naughty type foods.
Good advice there. What about drinking though? Because could we actually be thirsty and not hungry?
Absolutely. So, we often think that we're hungry and we are thirsty. We should be getting at least 6 to 8 glasses of water in our diet a day. And again, if we're doing more activity, that should be even more. So water is really, really important for lots of functions of our body. For concentration levels, for digestion. Our body's actually made up of 50 to 60% of water, and it's really important that we do stay hydrated. What often happens is people have empty calories with their drinks. So try and stay away from those sugary type drinks. And often we get tricked. So when we look at something, it says no added sugar. It doesn't mean it doesn't have sugar in it in the first place. So just, try and count how much sugar you're getting in your diet.
Great advice from both of you to get underway. But what about those of us who might be feeling overwhelmed at the prospect of a complete lifestyle overhaul in what has already been pretty upsetting time?
Yeah, so it is just really important not to let yourself get disheartened, because at the end of the day, everybody is in the same position. And like I was saying before, you may find what you previously could do is a struggle, and it takes a lot more effort than it used to. But the main thing to remember is you will get back there, but you just need to take little steps and build on your exercise levels when you feel ready to. And as we were saying before, if you have somebody you can exercise with, it's a really good way. It gives you motivation. And if you can form those social bubbles, adhering to coronavirus restrictions, then it's somebody to exercise with, somebody to keep your morale up. And it also just takes your mind away from the exercise that you may be doing. And you find you maybe done a little bit more than you're expecting.
My advice there is try and plan your meals. So make a list of ingredients that you need for the week, pre-plan your meals, put them in the freezer, have them for the week itself. We're all human though. If we are running late, then yes, you will. We all often pop to the local supermarket, grab some food. Just really, really important that when you're picking up food that's pre-packed or prepared, it's quite helpful to look at the traffic light system. So the food's going to tell you a little bit about how many calories is in that, how much fat, how much sugar, how much salt. And some of the pre-prepared food that we eat, it has added preservatives in there, and that's to make food taste better. It's also to make food last longer, and to try and eat healthy as we can when we are on the run, when we do have those busy lives. Check those figures. How much added sugar is in there. If you're going for the lower fat option, just check to see, have they taken out the good healthy fats of that product? Has a load of sugar been added in there? Check how much salt's been added into your food. So we don't really want to be having more than 5 grams of salt in our diet, because again, that can cause health issues. Trying to reduce those things as well.
It's really helpful advice there, Rachel. I love that. And you were talking about how it's different because we're kind of readjusting. This whole social distancing have affected things like the way we shop, the way we can work out, all of that stuff. Kelly, what's another way that we can try and get fit whilst we're still semi-locked down?
So yeah, gyms haven't been given the green light to open up just yet, but lots of gyms are taking their classes outdoors. So there's lots of space, being able to social distance between people, and obviously the fresh air. With these outdoor classes, the numbers are reduced. So the government states that it's a maximum of 5 participants and then 1 fitness instructor. So those smaller classes, the hand sanitising is just aiming to try and make everything safe. But obviously, if you don't feel comfortable with that just yet, there's lots of different options. There's online Zoom classes, YouTube videos, and it's just making it accessible for all. But one thing that I would say, if you are doing the online classes or you're following the YouTube videos or anything along those lines, just remember that the fitness instructor normally, in a normal setting, will be there checking your technique, checking your form during the class, but they're not able to do that in these situations. So just make sure that you focus on your technique, especially if you're starting to feel a little bit more tired, because that's when it's most likely to falter.
For me, it's certainly making it a little bit less scary to get back out into the world, to eat healthier, to start exercising a little bit more. Can you tell me where we can find out more information?
We've got plenty of content on the actual charity's webpage in regard to all sorts of things, health and wellbeing. So you can find those sorts of articles under the latest section.
Yeah, and whilst you're on the Firefighters Charity website, also, I mentioned it a little bit before, but if you type in ORCHA, it's ORCHA. That's the world's leading health app evaluation and advisor organisation that the Firefighters Charity has paired up with, and you'll be able to have access to a full library of reviewed wellbeing apps.
Great advice from both of you. Thank you so much for catching up. Trainers are going on. Good lunch. I'm going to get on it. You've been busy again over the past fortnight, taking on some amazing fundraising challenges for the charity and going over and beyond the call of duty in your work. So here we go again with another thank you too. We start by saying thank you to Asprey, who hosted a Kickstart to the Weekend quiz live on YouTube, raising £520. Georgina Tetley-Paul shaved off all her hair and raised a fantastic £540 by doing so. And well done to Jacob Shaw, who flipped a tractor tyre 431 times to raise a well-deserved £395. Peter Harden, meanwhile, was awarded our Outstanding Creative Challenge badge for his Fire Family Challenge, in which he raised £108. Anthony Naylor from Knutsford Fire Station completed an epic 12-hour cycling challenge and raised £793. Nikki Bridges challenged herself to run 5k every day throughout the month of May and raised £255. Also over the month of May, Lee Marsh took on a challenge to write Lincolnshire facts on some boards for regular passers-by in his local community, raising £155. Sean Michael walked an incredible 245,000 steps to raise £200. And well done to Leanne Thornton, who raised £531 after firefighters from Blue Lodge Hayward rescued her beloved horse, Zack. A round of applause also for firefighters from Bedfordshire, who designed and built a memorial garden at Luton Ambulance Station to show appreciation to the emergency service colleagues for whom they drove ambulances during the pandemic. Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service, meanwhile, has made sure all its staff have been able to stay connected during lockdown with a virtual tea and toast meeting place and competitive quizzing. And crews from Hampshire Fire and Rescue recently received a letter from Grace from Grange Junior School in Gosport, who wrote to tell them how grateful she was to know that there are amazing people in the world saving lives. And finally, when London firefighter Jimmy Durant was told he'd be receiving £1,000 from Absolute Radio and Wix for his work in the pandemic response team, he generously decided to donate it all to the Firefighters Charity. Thank you, Jimmy. Your incredible fundraising efforts are appreciated so much by the charity, especially given the devastating impact that the coronavirus pandemic has had on its finances. Falling short by around £200,000 a month due to the cancellation of all running, cycling, walking and other physical events, as well as all station-based events and face-to-face fundraising, the charity has a mountain to climb now to reach the $10 million it needs to raise this year and every year. So last week, the charity launched an urgent appeal, asking its sponsors to regularly donate and help claw back some of this income. Earlier this week, Sophie Pearce caught up with Essex Fire and Rescue Service ICT Service Delivery Manager Martin Chester to find out why regularly donating is so important to him and why he's pushing himself to raise further funds throughout July.
Hi, Martin.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, would you like to introduce yourself and your role in the fire service?
Yes, my name's Martin Chester. I'm an IT service delivery manager working at Essex County Fire and Rescue Services.
And tell me about the events that led to you seeking support from the Firefighters Charity.
It's quite historical. It goes back a good few years, but it really started to manifest itself when I started to work for the fire service. About 3.5 years ago. One of the colleagues at work was a keen runner, and it's something that I'd always wanted to do. But what happened was my leg would go numb when I started to run. I was diagnosed as having what's called iliac endofibrosis, which is it's a thickening and a thinning at the same time of the arteries that lead down into your legs through the stomach, and it's normally affects professional cyclists because they're sat in a particular position for quite some length of time, and actually the artery becomes brittle and it pinches So the blood just simply can't get through. I went to see a specialist. He said, yes, we can operate. And at that time, I'd got quite friendly with one of the home safety visit officers at work as well, who just so happens to be our charity coordinator for the service at Essex. And he mentioned getting in touch with the charity because he did say that I'd be eligible for some support, which I wasn't aware of because working in the support departments, I thought it was for operational staff only.
So you were invited to spend time at Marine Court, our centre in Littlehampton. What was that like?
When I arrived at Marine Court, I was still on crutches, and by the end of the week I was walking unaided. So, yeah, it was absolutely great. They just give you the confidence to be able to exercise in a safe environment where you've got that support, you're under strict supervision, because they won't let you do anything that they think will cause you any more problems. And if anything, they were holding me back a little bit because I was quite keen, and I think that's a problem. I've seen it with quite a few people that have had similar situations to me, where you just want to get cracking again afterwards. But you could cause yourself more harm than good by doing that. So the guys at the Firefighters Charity were very, very good at not only holding me back a little bit, but also explaining why. That you could possibly injure yourself even further if you try to push yourself too hard too soon.
And had you seen any impact on your mental health going through what you've been going through?
Massively, yeah. I got very, very low. And that's, again, the Firefighters Charity. They've got their own counsellors. They are very, very good. They're very professional. We could probably see that the mental health issues were going to go on for quite a lot longer because I wasn't completely healed. In fact, things did get worse, actually, in between visits. So my mental health did become quite heavily affected. So they helped me to refer to my local doctors again. And get some more specialist help closer to home as well. And they really listened. They understand that they've seen a lot of this sort of these sorts of type issues in the past, especially because I've always been quite fit, and all of a sudden that's been taken away from you. And one of the things that's always kept mental health in check for me is the fact that I could exercise, and all of a sudden that gone.
You continue to receive support and be in contact with the charity throughout lockdown. You're still in touch with Marine Court now, is that right?
Yeah, because due to the issues I had, I couldn't really start exercising properly for about 3 months. So I went back to some more treatment where I could get in the hydrotherapy pool, and it really helped with my mobility. We did some measurements when I went in the second week to see how far I could stretch certain areas, and the difference was amazing. I could stretch an awful lot further by the end of that week than I could at the beginning of the week. So my mobility had improved, but unfortunately I was still getting symptoms, which is when I decided that I needed to get back in touch with my consultant, and that was at the beginning of lockdown. And that worried me because I was worried that some of the exercises I was doing might have been exacerbating the situation. So I got in touch with a charity, and within a day or two they'd give me a call back and give me some advice on some more exercises. One of the things that they did for me was, and they do for everybody, they give you specific exercises relevant to your injury, so they're tailored to you individually. And I mentioned, I gave them a call during lockdown and told them that my symptoms were getting worse again, and what should I be doing. And they gave me some new specific exercises based on my ongoing symptoms. There's an app that you can use, that they recommend, that they simply push all the exercises down through to the app on your phone. So you've got them all on your phone, and you record them every day, or as long as as often as you want to carry out the exercises, you can just keep recording your progress on there. And that's another way for them to keep an eye on me as well, to make sure that I'm not overdoing things.
And so a few weeks ago, you couldn't walk still. And yet now you are a few days into an amazing fundraising challenge, considering that fact. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Well, the hospital just told me to start exercising. So I thought I'm not going to overdo it. I spoke to the charity, and we discussed about what I should or shouldn't be doing, not to take it too hard too soon, and all this sort of stuff. And one of the things that I've always liked to do is, if I can't run, I like to go on the cross trainer. And I was on the cross trainer one morning. I thought, well, I've got to get my fitness up. I've got to do it gently. So I need to give myself a bit of an incentive and a bit of momentum to keep going as well. Plus, the firefighters charity, they are struggling during the pandemic. They've lost £200,000 worth of revenue through lost donations through the pandemic. So I thought, well, what else could I do to help support the charity, because they've given me such a lot of support. One morning on the cross trainer, I thought, well, why don't I just try and do 10k a day for the whole of July? That'll help me get my fitness up a little bit. It's not something, I don't have to push myself too hard. I can do it as quick or as slowly as I want, and at the moment it is quite slow, to be honest. And if I don't manage 10k on a cross trainer, I'll do a little bit of, I might do 5k on a cross trainer, or I'll take the dog for a 5k walk to make up the 10k. And I thought it's just something that I could do just to try and give something back to the charity for all the help that they've given me. And also try to publicise the fact that, it is such a good organisation, and I think without it, an awful lot of people would really, really struggle. I don't think I'd be in the position I'm in now without the charity's help. I think it'd probably take me another couple of years to get back to any level of fitness that I wanted to without them. So it's my way of saying thank you, and to try to give something back.
Would you like to do a quick plug for your Just Giving page if anyone would like to donate and support you?
Yeah, so it's www.justgiving.com/fundraising /Martin-Chester3.
You mentioned about our fundraising loss of income, that we're £200,000 a month in loss of income. We've recently launched an urgent appeal asking the fire services community to become a regular donor, or to donate if they can. And you're already a regular donor, which is amazing, considering you've been in the fire service 3.5 years and you support the charity in this way. Why did you choose to become a regular donor, and why do you think it's important that the fire service community does that?
For me, it was obviously working for the fire service. I'm proud to work for the fire service. I work in support, so it's not, I'm not a frontline firefighter, but I'm still very, very proud to work for the fire service. And I'm quite passionate about what we do. I think it's really, really important that everybody's got the facilities to be able to go and ask for help, whether it be mental or physical, whatever it is. And we've got such a great organisation in the charity to be able to do that for us. And I think it'd be such a shame. It really would. It'd be devastating to the fire service if we lost the charity. It really would. So I think I'm quite passionate about, because of the help they've given me, particularly as well, but the help that they can give to thousands and thousands of others. I think it really is important that we do support the charity, try and get behind it, and try to keep it going.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time and for sharing your story, and good luck with your amazing fundraising challenge. I wish you all the best of luck with it, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course, you can support the urgent appeal by donating today. Just go to firefighters.charity.org.uk/appeal to find out more and sign up. That's it for episode 4. Thanks for listening. Please tell your friends and colleagues to listen, subscribe and review. All the information you need to do so is on the website and on the Firefighters Charity's social media channels. We'll have much more for you in the next episode in a fortnight's time. Until then, take care and stay safe.
You've been listening to the Shouts podcast. For more information on the show and how the Firefighters Charity could support you, check out www.firefighterscharity.org.uk.
If you liked Shout podcast, you're going to love My Firefighters Charity, the new social media wellbeing and fundraising app for the fire services community. Packed with great wellbeing content from the expert teams at the Firefighters Charity, you can connect with others, join groups, collaborate and have fun with your fire family friends across the UK. And you can get the advice and help you're after from the Firefighters Charity whenever you need it. Head to your app store, search for My Firefighters Charity and register for free today.